Carrion knows what it means to be a monster, able to peer into the blackness that the viewer never sees, and creates an entire experience about what goes on in the shadows. The game is able to effectively balance creeping through the vents as the rumble of your growl sends shivers down the spines of your enemies, seconds before you leap out and crush them in a havoc of bone, blood, and tentacle, before you assimilate their mutilated corpses into your own flesh-covered coating. Every battle is about getting a one-hit kill and slinking back into the shady vents to wait for another unsuspecting meat puppet to splatter across the already blood-soaked walls. Carrion forces you to become Ghostface instead of the Terminator because calculation and cunning are required in most encounters, as your bloated coagulation of corpuscles is not only your most intimidating feature, it's also your greatest weakness. It's tough to avoid attacks as the gelatinous creature, so speed and stealth are the keys to successfully clearing a room, and your flesh is very soft to bullets that will melt right through your maroon membrane, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Shouldn't I be so swollen that most bullets bounce off me? I guess that would flatten the difficulty curve significantly, which brings me to my next point. Carrion sells itself as a power fantasy game, but I don't think that could be further from the truth. Every encounter has the possibility to go extremely wrong very quickly if you rush in and start flailing. If you want to be successful in Carrion, then picking your targets off one by one is the most optimal method. So I don't feel like I got what I wanted from Carrion. I didn't feel like a mastermind residing in the shadows, waiting for the groups to position themselves correctly so I could swoop in and ravage them. I felt like I had to wait for a moment where I couldn't be caught and pick off enemies one by one, because going loud, the thing that monsters often do, would get my corpulent husk melted by white-hot lead. Did I go into Carrion expecting an inversion of Doom 2016? Yes, I did. Was I surprised when the game was less loud and more stealth-focused? Yes, I was. Did it still work as a game with a stealth focus? Yes. Mostly. I don't like to talk about the difficulty of a game because everyone who watches one of my videos could be playing at a different difficulty setting, or could come to the game with a different set of skills. Like, maybe you beat Mile High Club on Veteran, but you can't defeat the Hydra in Shin Megami Tensei 5. But I feel the need to especially call out the dumbest decision in the game, the shield. This shield can single-handedly ruin an encounter. It makes the enemy utterly immune to your attacks, even if your ginormous hide completely covers them, leaving the enemy to melt your health bar. This, combined with the drone enemies, is when Carrion is at its worst, when the hunter becomes the hunted, as you're reduced to a pudgy amoeba skulking back to your ear duct, a fraction of your former size. I understand that you need to upgrade your enemies in order to give the game difficulty, but this is just annoying. And to be completely forthcoming with you all, this is the first game I'm reviewing that I didn't complete due to frustration with the combat encounters. But before you all cry heresy, the point I left off at was when I couldn't get to the final biomass in the bunker, which is over 90% of the game, but it takes a lot for a regular enemy to make me rage quit a game. Carrion is a Metroidvania, and with that comes abilities. My personal favourite was Possession. Inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing, this ingeniously obvious ability fits sublimely into your arsenal, and is superb in the slithering in the vents playstyle I described earlier. There's just something gleefully evil about this non-spiritual kind of possession. I love to imagine the dripping tendrils burrowing their way into someone's grey matter and overriding their muscles. It does take way too long to hijack though, and the chances soldiers will shoot you before you get a chance to use it are high. And of course there's Harpagoria, which is as loud as an attack as you can manage, unleashing a barrage of Sarkoos harpoons to impale, ensnare, and obliterate your prey. I adore the visual ataxia that ensues every time it's activated. Movement is a highlight of Carrion, There is no limitation or corner you can't reach as you shamble across the room, and it looks so involved in how your amorphous limbs grasp the terrain. There are so many visual components, still, it's amazingly intuitive how the game simply slides you in the direction you're pointing, in the early game at least. As you progress, the creature gets bigger and bigger. The problem with this is that it starts to become less and less clear where the center is, or where the spot you're controlling is. It led me to getting caught on the level geometry frequently, as the game thought I wanted to run into a wall instead of going over it. This becomes even more frustrating when you need to transport bombs to blow up walls in just a few seconds, and if you fail, you need to find a power socket to survive the next bomb, and these two things coalesce into an infuriating issue. I don't think I've ever played a game where the movement got worse as the game went on, but I guess Carrion is the only game where that's a fair criticism, although the bigger you are, the more visually awesome your traversal becomes. Carrion also has puzzles, and puzzles are a tricky thing to review in games. If they're easy, I don't even think about mentioning them. On the other hand, if they're too obtuse, then I complain about them. Carrion's puzzles aren't tricky per se, but my main criticism is why they're here at all. Now I get that it breaks up the repetitive fights, and you can't have platforming when your main character can instantaneously reach any part of the room. But puzzles in a giant monster game, it just doesn't fit. I'm not here to think, I'm here for carnage. It's just an odd inclusion, but the only thing I can think of to break up the monotony of battle is more stealth sections. So while I don't have a better idea, I find it weird that I'm problem-solving as a creature with more anuses than brains. Or maybe it's the other way around, I certainly don't know. Carrion is not the game I was expecting. I thought the game would be a balance of power and stealth, but you're mainly relegated to hiding in vents and picking off your victims. While this is tense and adds challenge to the game, it starts to lean too far into the hiding when shield enemies are introduced. Whilst the feeling of splattering enemies against thick concrete is an immensely gory and gratifying experience, I felt like Carrion was too afraid to let me loose on the relatively helpless enemies, and that's not the unique power fantasy I was hoping for when I chose this game. While I did feel like I was really a rampaging Cronenbergian atrocity tearing my way through a secret base, Carrion excellently captured another horror trope of hiding within the walls.